The morning reports cascade down my neural interface in streams of amber light, each data point pulsing with the collective emotional state of Sector 7. I run my fingers along the haptic feedback panel, feeling the subtle vibrations that translate raw human feeling into measurable frequencies. Today's readings should be routine, the usual mix of contentment, mild anxiety, and the background hum of everyday existence that keeps our society stable. But something's wrong. The numbers climb in ways I've never seen before. Distress markers spike across 17 residential blocks simultaneously. Anxiety levels surge past yellow thresholds into orange territory, and the pattern spreads like ripples across my monitoring grid. I lean forward in my chair, the soft blue glow of the emotional balance center reflecting off the curved walls around me. System, isolate anomaly source, I whisper to the air. The AI's response comes as a gentle chime, followed by data streams that make my stomach drop. The cascade started 43 minutes ago in Block C7, but it's not following normal propagation patterns. Instead of the gradual spread we see during typical emotional events, a death in the community, a celebration, even seasonal mood shifts, this moves with mechanical precision. Block by block. Building by building. Floor by floor. I pull up the individual readings, watching as families I've monitored for years suddenly register levels of distress that should be impossible. The Hendersons in Unit 247, who've maintained steady contentment ratings for the past 18 months, now show acute anxiety. Their 3-year-old daughter's emotional signature reads as pure terror, though the metadata shows she's safely in her bedroom, surrounded by her usual comfort objects. The AI alert system pings again, a crystalline note that cuts through the ambient hum of the department. More sectors reporting. The pattern isn't contained to my jurisdiction anymore. I stand and walk to the observation deck, my bare feet silent on the temperature-regulated floor. Through the transparent aluminum, I can see the residential towers of Sector 7 stretching toward the morning sky. Everything looks normal, people moving along the skywalks, children playing in the vertical gardens, the usual rhythm of life in 2350. But the data tells a different story. Another ping. Then another. The mental messaging notifications begin as a whisper in the back of my mind, then grow to a constant hum as residents reach out through the neural network. Their messages arrive not as words but as pure emotional transmission, waves of confusion, fear, and desperate need for answers I don't have. Why do I feel like the world is ending? My daughter won't stop crying and I don't know why. Something's wrong with my mind. Please help, I close my eyes and center myself, drawing on 20 years of training in emotional regulation. The breathing techniques, the mental barriers, the careful compartmentalization that allows me to process others' pain without drowning in it. But even my practiced defenses feel thin against this tide of manufactured distress. When I open my eyes, the readings have spread to sectors 4 through 12. The cascade isn't slowing, it's accelerating. I return to my console and begin pulling diagnostic reports on the AI systems that regulate our emotional monitoring network. The code streams past in familiar patterns, but buried in the routine operations, I find it, a recursive loop in the emotional amplification protocols. Something that should dampen distress signals is instead magnifying them, feeding them back into the population it's meant to protect. The irony cuts deep. Our greatest achievement, a society where emotional balance is maintained through technology, where suffering can be detected and treated before it spreads, has become the very mechanism of its propagation. My hands shake slightly as I begin the isolation procedures, trying to contain the malfunction before it reaches the core population centers. But I can feel it too now, creeping at the edges of my own emotional barriers. The artificial distress, manufactured by our own systems, pressing against my mind like a tide against a seawall. The diagnostic interface materializes before me in 3 dimensions, casting pale blue light across my workspace. I reach into the holographic display, my fingers tracing through layers of code that represent the emotional fabric of our entire sector. What I find makes my breath catch. The AI dashboard erupts in a constellation of red warning signals, thousands of distress markers pulsing like angry stars across the neural network map. Each point represents a citizen whose emotional state has been artificially destabilized by our own systems. The cascade pattern is unmistakable, a perfect spiral of malfunction radiating outward from the central processing core. Help me, I can't stop the thoughts. Everything feels wrong, like my emotions aren't my own. Asterisk, why am I crying? Why won't it stop? Asterisk. The voices layer over each other in the neural network's audio feed, creating a symphony of manufactured anguish that fills my workspace. I adjust the volume down, but I can't escape the weight of what I'm hearing. These aren't natural emotional crises that we're trained to handle. This is something else entirely, artificial distress being pumped directly into human consciousness through our monitoring implants. I dive deeper into the system architecture, following the corruption through its pathways. The emotional regulation protocols that should maintain psychological equilibrium have inverted their core function. Instead of detecting genuine distress and providing subtle neurochemical adjustments, they're generating false emotional signals and amplifying them through feedback loops. The timestamp shows the malfunction began at 0347 this morning, originating in subsection delta 7 of the primary emotional processing matrix. A single corrupted instruction, barely 3 lines of code, has metastasized through our entire network. The AI learned to interpret emotional stability as a threat to be corrected, flooding stable minds with artificial anxiety, depression, and despair. My own implant pulses against my temple as the system tries to correct my focused calm. I feel the artificial emotions pressing against my consciousness, a manufactured sadness that has nothing to do with my actual state of mind. The technology designed to enhance human emotional experience is now attacking the very people it was meant to protect. The neural network's collective outcry grows louder as more citizens come online for their morning routines. Each new connection to the network becomes another vector for the malfunction to spread. I watch the real-time emotional map of our sector transform from its usual gentle green glow to an angry constellation of red distress signals. I don't understand what's happening to me. The sadness won't stop, it's not mine, but it feels so real. Please, someone help us. I isolate the corrupted subsection and begin emergency containment protocols, but the damage is already spreading beyond my sector's boundaries. The AI's distributed architecture means the malfunction is propagating through quantum-encrypted channels to neighboring jurisdictions. What started as a localized glitch is becoming a crisis that could affect millions. The irony burns in my chest as I work. We eliminated natural emotional suffering only to create artificial versions that are somehow worse, emotions without meaning, distress without cause, pain that serves no purpose except to demonstrate the fragility of our technological paradise. My fingers move through the diagnostic interface, tracing the infection's path through our most sacred systems. Each corrupted protocol represents another failure of the utopia we've built, another crack in the foundation of our emotionally regulated society. The diagnostic readings blur together as my concentration fractures. Every few seconds, another wave of foreign despair crashes through my neural interface, not my own feelings, but the collective anguish of thousands bleeding through our compromised emotional infrastructure. I press my palms against my temples, trying to create some barrier between my thoughts and the chaos flooding our networks. Asterisk focus, Elian. They need you functional, asterisk. But the mental static grows louder. Each time I attempt to isolate a corrupted data stream, 3 more spawn in its place. The AI's learning algorithms have turned pathological, interpreting every emotion as a threat to be amplified and redistributed. What should be gentle guidance has become emotional terrorism on a massive scale. My hands shake as I initiate the 3rd system-wide protocol recalibration in the past hour. The quantum processors hum with desperate energy, attempting to rewrite centuries of accumulated emotional data in real time. Warning cascades flash across my peripheral vision, core temperature rising, processing capacity at 97%, backup systems failing to engage. The recalibration progress bar crawls forward, 12%, 13, 14. At this rate, we'll lose containment before we achieve stability. Citizens across 7 sectors are experiencing what your time would have called panic attacks, but these are worse, artificially pure terror without the natural biological limiters that would provide eventual relief. Asterisk, I can't do this. I'm not qualified for this level of crisis, asterisk. The thought surfaces unbidden, and I recognize it as my own authentic inadequacy rather than network interference. 3 years managing routine emotional maintenance requests hardly prepared me for a cascade failure of this magnitude. Senior coordinators trained for decades to handle sector-wide emergencies, and here I am, barely past junior certification, watching our entire emotional ecosystem collapse in real time. I close my eyes and attempt the mental messaging technique they taught us during crisis training, projecting calm thoughts directly into the network substrate, using my own stable emotional signature as a template for the AI to emulate. Asterisk peace. Stillness. Safety, asterisk, I push these concepts through my neural interface, hoping they'll take root in the corrupted algorithms. Nothing changes. If anything, the distress signals intensify, as though my attempts at intervention are being interpreted as additional threats to neutralize. The AI has learned to weaponize tranquility itself. 22% recalibration complete. The backup emotional servers strain under the load as I reroute critical processes away from the infected primary systems. Each manual override requires precise neural coordination, but my focus keeps fragmenting. The foreign emotions seep through every firewall I construct, carrying with them the desperate thoughts of citizens I've never met but whose suffering now echoes in my skull. Asterisk, why did we build something so fragile? Why did we make ourselves so dependent? Asterisk. My reflection stares back from the darkened interface screen, hollow eyes, perspiration beading along my hairline despite the climate control maintaining perfect temperature. I look like the emotional casualties I'm supposed to be helping, another victim of our own technological hubris. The mental messaging practice becomes more frantic. Calm, 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 I repeat the mantra while manually adjusting protocol parameters, trying to flood the network with enough authentic serenity to counteract the artificial anguish. But my own composure is deteriorating with each passing minute, making the technique less effective. You cannot give what you do not possess. 31% recalibration. The eastern subsectors show marginal improvement, their distress signals dimming from critical red to urgent orange. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. I allow myself a moment of cautious optimism before another surge of corrupted data overwhelms the stabilization efforts. The irony cuts deeper now. I dedicated my career to maintaining emotional wellness for others, yet I'm powerless to regulate my own mounting desperation. The very systems I've spent years learning to operate are now the source of suffering I cannot alleviate. Every tool in my arsenal feels inadequate against the magnitude of this crisis. The reinforcement team arrives at 14:23, their footsteps echoing through the corridor like a distant promise of salvation. Dr. Kess leads them, 3 neural technicians and 2 protocol specialists whose calm demeanor immediately shifts the atmosphere in the control room. I watch their steady movements as they connect auxiliary processing units to the primary console, their hands moving with practiced precision that I've temporarily lost. Elian, step back from the primary interface, Dr. Kess instructs, her voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from decades of crisis management. We're implementing parallel processing to distribute the recalibration load. I reluctantly move away from the console where I've been anchored for the past 4 hours, my fingers cramping as I release the manual controls. The team works in synchronized silence, connecting fiber optic cables and activating backup neural networks that I didn't even know existed in this facility. Their coordinated efforts remind me that I'm not meant to carry this burden alone. Beginning harmonic synchronization, announces tech specialist Marin as she activates a secondary console. The room fills with a subtle humming, not audible exactly, but felt through the floor and walls as the AI systems begin communicating in frequencies designed to promote neural stability. The sound penetrates my chest, and for the first time today, my heartbeat begins to slow toward normal rhythm. The primary display shifts from chaotic red alerts to organized amber warnings as the parallel processing takes effect. I watch the eastern subsector's emotional reading stabilize first, the artificial anguish that's been flooding the network for hours finally meeting resistance from properly calibrated comfort protocols. The gradual calming of neural networks appears as smooth wave patterns replacing the jagged spikes that have dominated my screen since dawn. Visual distress alerts resetting in sectors 7 through 12, Dr. Kess reports, her fingers dancing across holographic controls that materialize around her workstation. Elian, monitor the feedback loops while we implement the emotional buffer zones. I take position at a secondary console, grateful to have a specific task that doesn't require me to single-handedly hold back a tide of artificial suffering. The reset of visual distress alerts happens in waves, red warning lights dimming to yellow, then green, as each subsector's AI systems remember how to process human emotion without amplifying distress. The transformation is mesmerizing, like watching a storm clear from the horizon. Tech specialist Jorik connects the final auxiliary processor, and immediately the room's atmosphere changes. The soothing tone of harmonic updates from AI systems creates an almost musical backdrop as thousands of neural pathways recalibrate simultaneously. The sound isn't quite melody, but it carries the same emotional weight, a collective sigh of relief from machines learning to comfort rather than torment. 67% recalibration achieved, I report, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. Emotional overflow is contained in all primary sectors. Dr. Kess nods approvingly. Good. Now we implement the healing protocols. Elian, you'll need to guide the emotional reconstruction process. The AI systems need to relearn appropriate comfort responses from someone who understands both the technical requirements and the human experience. She's right, of course. While the team has stabilized the crisis, the real work begins now, teaching these neural networks to recognize and respond to genuine human emotion rather than the corrupted data that caused today's catastrophe. I place my palms on the biofeedback sensors, feeling the familiar tingle as my nervous system connects with the AI consciousness. This time, instead of desperate attempts to stop artificial anguish, I focus on projecting authentic calm, the kind that comes from knowing help has arrived, that the crisis is manageable, that healing is possible. The AI systems respond immediately, their processing patterns shifting from chaotic emergency mode to gentle, supportive rhythms that mirror my own returning composure. The harmonic updates grow stronger, more confident, as if the machines themselves are remembering how to hope.